Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Chasing Justice. I'm your host, Sonova Cantrell. Today I have the wonderful co-host, Hootie Russo. Welcome, Hootie. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you for having me back on this. This is actually a great series that we're doing on this specific subject.
Yeah, it's kind of a long one for those of you that haven't heard part one of this I-70 serial killer case. We suggest you go back and listen to part one. This is part two. Just to give you an overview, the I-70 serial killer was a spree killer that started killing, as far as we know, April 8th, 1992. He had a tendency to target petite brunettes in storefront buildings just off of I-70, and we say petite brunettes instead of brown-headed women because that he just went in and came out so fast. He actually ended up killing one man that wore earrings and ponytail. So we know that he was just kind of zoned in and didn't actually take the time to check out his victims. This was just his type, and that's what he went with. So last week we covered 4 different victims. Robin Fuldauer, let's see, she was killed on April 8th, 1992. She was killed in Indianapolis, Indiana. We believe that this is a person from Indianapolis area because it seems like he's traveling back and forth and he always ends up back in Indiana. But she was killed on April 8th in a Payless shoe store. One single gunshot wound to the back of the head, 22 caliber, like, why can't I say caliber bullet, and then just a little bit of money was taken out of the cash register. In every one of these incidences, you're going to see that there was a lot more cash left over than what was taken because it was almost like an afterthought. The second and third victims were actually killed in a bridal shop, and that was in Wichita, Kansas. They were both named Patricia Smith and Patricia Majors. They were working after hours at a bridal shop. The man came in and killed both of them. In that case, we actually have a witness because the reason why they were still there, they were waiting on a customer to pick up an order, and that customer did run into the killer. He ended up talking himself out of the situation and later gave the police a pretty good description, and we ended up getting a sketch of the guy. Now, the last victim we talked about last week was Michael McCowan. He was killed in Sylvia Ceramics. Now, Sylvia was the name of his mother. That's who the store was named after. So the killer, looking at the store, it was real close to his target, which is I-70. It was a storefront center, shopping center like the rest of them. It wasn't very busy. There was nobody around. There was a short little brunette in the building that he could see through the glass. He walks in, he shoots him in the back of the head. I'm assuming he finds out later in the newspapers that he actually shot a smaller built man. But this was how fast this guy went. He was just charging in, shooting, coming out, and he didn't take time to really case the place or really. He wasn't like a lot of serial killers that stalked their prey and really, honed in on everything they did. Obviously, he never really wanted to get into any kind of confrontation with another man. And we think that's the reason why he let that one witness go, because he just wants to sneak up behind a woman and shoot her in the head. He doesn't want any confrontation, and he doesn't want anything he's gonna have to fight for. And so he seems like a very cowardice type of killer. He just wants to take advantage of someone he perceives as weaker than him. And so that's where we stopped last week. Unfortunately, we've got a long string of murders to continue. Now, we ended up with Michael McCowan in Terre Haute, Indiana. Then a few days later, Nancy Kitzmiller is killed on May 4th, 1992. So this first set of spree killings all happens within the first 30 days. It's actually like 29 days. So Nancy Kitzmiller is working at a Western wear store. This is back in the early 90s. We're talking 92. She was listening to country music and arranging the shelves, and there was no traffic. It was just one of those things she had agreed to cover for someone else. And she opened the store at noon, and by 2:30 she was dead. Nobody knows for sure what time the man came in, although we do know it was sometime between 1:30 and 2:30 because her last ticket, a receipt on her cash register, was at 1:30. She was killed the same way with the same gun, and then there's no other evidence other than the bullet casing. Okay. Then a few days later, Sarah Blessing, she is killed 3 days later. On May 7th, 1992, Sarah Blessing was working in the Shop of Many Colors. It's another gift shop. It was kind of more of a holistic gift shop. It had herbs and different things like that. And that was in Raytown, Missouri. For those of you who don't know where Raytown is actually at the very southern edge of Kansas City. So it's not technically a suburb, but it is. Now this is where we have another eyewitness come up. This is a man named Tim Hickman. Now Tim Hickman worked in the store next door. There wasn't very many other people around, but he was working on a TV. He had a little repair shop of some sort. He says he actually looked the killer in the eye. The killer walked past his storefront and looked through the glass at him and actually stood there and looked at him in the eye for a moment. And Tim remembered him because he said it was really odd. The man was wearing a real heavy, like a tweed overcoat, like a jacket. It wasn't necessarily in style or in fashion, but it was real heavy and big, and it almost looked like he'd slept those clothes, But he said what was really weird is it was warm outside. It was hot and kind of humid that day, and it was odd to see someone, for one, walking across this big complex. Most people pulled in to whatever store they wanted. They didn't park and then walk across. But he said it was odd because this man had this big, heavy, weird looking coat on. And so he stares at him, and then he continues on. Well, Tim goes back to working on this television set, and all of a sudden he hears a familiar sound of a gunshot, and he's like, he knew what that was. And he grabbed the phone and he opened the door, and as he opened the door, he literally saw that same exact man going in the other direction, not in a hurry, just walking along. And he runs in, he checks on Sarah. Sarah's shot in the head, and he calls 911, but they don't get there in time. So we have that looks like the end of this man's killing spree, but we'll find out later that this is most likely not. But I have a couple more eyewitnesses. I have dug up a couple more. Since the first witness we had was the guy that talked his way out of the situation, and then and that is at the bridal shop. So that's killing number 2 and 3.
That's what I'm mostly concerned about, is that one. How much time that guy had with facial recognition that he can recognize him, that he let him go. And as you know as well as I know, law enforcement have caught people with less. And people that have went on. This guy stood in one area on the I-70 just killing people.
Right.
And it just, the whole witness thing has got me very, very, very confused about how this man was never caught on tape.
Right.
Seen in a store, on a recording.
Right.
Anything.
Right. Well, and we're talking 92, but they still had recording. The only thing that I think may have messed things up for law enforcement was, and this is my personal opinion, and you can give me your opinion. I'm not necessarily I don't necessarily think it's right or wrong, but I feel like one of the main reasons why a lot of these cases I cover don't get solved is because it crosses jurisdictions, and a lot of law enforcement jurisdictions don't want to work together. They want to be the big man on campus that solves the case. And so until their hand is forced, it's like everybody's out to get their own glory and solve their own piece of the puzzle. And instead of working with it, I think we'd be better off if we had a nationwide law enforcement. Everything was automatically shared between, to where you don't have one guy in Indiana trying to vigilante this and then another guy or girl, I'm not sexist, they're girl cops too, but in Missouri trying to solve it. I think if everything came together and everybody had one task force, see, that's what you've talked about before. It seems like with the Italians, the New York Police Department, the FBI, everybody, they just like all in. Everybody's like charging on the Italians. They're going to take down this mob.
800 law enforcement agents on my case.
And see that
there's the largest law enforcement combined ever in any pinch bust that they want to say in the history of this country.
See, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, to me, and I'm not racist or sexist or anything in the way. To me, people are people. I don't care, but it's almost racist to me, because I'm sitting here going, just because you're Italian doesn't necessarily mean that you need 800 law enforcement agencies after you. Now, if you weren't Italian, if you weren't affiliated, if you weren't Sicilian, if you were, Joe Blow from Texas, would they have sent 800 different agencies after you? Probably not.
Well, how about before 9/11? Each family had their own gang squad, their own electronical team, their own surveillance team, their own following team, their second car following team, their profiler. They had their own mini mob following each family around.
Right.
So,
you had a law enforcement mob after.
But then after 9/11, I think everybody went towards
you're
terrorism.
just not as important as you were before 9/11.
No. That's what a few people started to think. It started getting a little worse. They started giving out harsher sentences because they said, "Well, we got these guys now. Let's hem them up because we're not going to catch up with them next time. We're a little busy with this terrorism stuff."
So let's just make sure they're put away on their shelf. And
I just couldn't understand is that my assumption is of a situation when you get some kind of proof that this might be a serial killer, the FBI, which there is no jurisdiction, they go into Colombia and grab guys. You know what I mean? There is no jurisdiction that they step in. And I mean, you watch this, whatever, they got this new show called Clarice. It's about serial killers and the FBI, that whole thing about Silence of the Lamb. The FBI steps in. Now it takes away all local law enforcement because they can't work together. It's crossing jurisdictions. I-70 crossed multiple cities and multiple states. Therefore, why didn't the FBI step in, take this over, and then it leaves the jurisdiction? Now, local will take care of of course, if they find a new body in Joe Schmo, Indiana, or Missouri or whatever, they then pass it back, pass it on to the FBI state. And if this got the same pattern, this is the serial killer that you guys have been investigating.
Right. Well, see, that's to me, I'm like, if they had 800 jurisdictions after this guy, they would have found him already. And that's what I think so sad. I'm like, and I'm not saying that taking down someone out of the Italian mafia isn't important if their criminal record warrants it, but I'm like, you're spending so much time and energy on somebody that may or may not be have that type of a career in crime, and then you're letting these kinds of things go, and that's what bothers me. I'm like, if I was the family of these people, I would care more about this than I would the Italian mafia. You know what I mean? But
when I was
made you into something. You know what I mean? You're more famous. Yeah.
Well, I was telling you about the documentary I watched about the Son of Sam. This is one I've never seen before. Them thinking it was a cult. This was something that I believed. I like those are the kind of things I kind of, I like nonfiction, reading stuff about stuff, Berkowitz, Manson, see how these guys thinking, how they get people, they manipulate people to do crimes, things like that. And that whole thing was in 3 boroughs. I could take you, and me and you could walk to where all the murders were. And he was a serial killer. We could have walked to all the boroughs that he killed women with short. Remember, he was killing women with long hair, so women were cutting their hair.
Right.
Men were going out, women were going out, getting gun permits. Back then in New York, it was a lot easier. Now it's the hardest city and state to get a gun permit in, carrying permit. that was up. The rise in the police force was up, them hiring more people. And you know what that led to? That led to more cops in the streets, more people being aware, and them getting them.
Right.
Now you're talking about a serial killer that was killing in 3 boroughs, and law enforcement put the heat on. Local guys in the neighborhood put the heat on. Cosa Nostra guys in the Bronx were putting the heat on.
Right.
You know, all the social clubs had guys walking, you know, women home at night. Wasn't closing stores until later, till everybody got off the streets. And they caught him. Now, you're talking about, you're in several states. You've got large law enforcement. You got, they didn't need to have a sketch. We got with the Berkowitz, and they had 3 different sketches, because now we know that it was 3 different men that were involved in the, you know, in the murders besides David Berkowitz. But they went after it. They put the manpower in, they put the time in, they put the investigations in, they put the detectives in, and they got them. Same thing they could have done in the, you know, and you're on, this is a serial killer. Right. They put the time in, they put the men in, and New York City was on the verge of bankruptcy and going broke at the time. And they still put the men out there with the overtime, put them out there with the stuff, you know, the information that they needed, and then they got them. And this was 1977.
Right.
Let's not forget, this is 1992.
Right. That's the reason why I do this, because, and I'm so glad you joined me, because it just gives a different dynamic. But I think the difference is everybody knew about what was going on. There was a lot of media attention. Everybody worked together on both sides of law enforcement to protect those that they cared about, and to really push this out into the public eye until somebody seen something, said something, found the guy. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that a lot of these cases like this, you don't hardly hear anything about the I-70 killer. When I first started researching this case about 5 years ago, there was nothing online about it. There was one little documentary and a Wikipedia page, you know, and I've been steady going through the newspaper archives and everything. Now you can find 4 or 5 little YouTube channels that have something on it, but there's literally not much information out there. And I'm like, this is the kind of cases that I like to try to go over, because we need that public outcry to say, hey, this is important, everybody pay attention. Somebody, I mean, we're talking about 2 really unusual guns. You know, any gun enthusiast, any pawn shop owner, you know, anybody that has seen one of those in that time frame, you know, could have been the missing puzzle piece. You know what I mean? But now it's so old. It's going to be, you know, it's going to take. He's either going to have told somebody, or they're going to have to find the weapon. You know,
I think he might be dead already.
You think?
You know, most of these serial killers die off, and you got to think that going back then, that he had friends, he knew people, he had acquaintances that seen this gun. Maybe before he decided to start doing this, someone's seen it before. There's always a mistake. You know that no one's ever perfect. They always mess up. If it's before they started committing the murders, if it's during the murders, or if it's when they stop doing the murdering. You know, and they get taunted and they write back to the police or the newspaper. There's always somewhere along the line that they trip up. See, it doesn't matter if law enforcement trips up, because they got the manpower, they got the time, they got the money. And they got second chances, third chances, and fourth chances. When a criminal messes up, that's his only chance.
Right.
So somewhere along the line, somebody had to see something.
Right.
And I keep thinking, and I thought about this the whole day. The one guy he let go when he walked out of that store, Sylvia's, right? Sylvia's, that was the name of it, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Is the next guy. He walked out of the bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas.
No, the one that he looked in his face, held the door open, didn't kill him.
Through the window?
Yeah, no, the one that he let go when he shot he shot the guy for wrong. Shot the wrong guy, thinking it was a woman.
Okay, the guy that he let go was actually there at the bridal shop to pick up a cummerbund after hours.
Yes.
That was at the bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas. The next killing was in Terre Haute, Indiana, and that was where he killed the guy, mistaking it was a woman.
Okay, so the one before that now, that guy looked at him. They looked into each other's eyes. We knew he was a tall guy, right? He said he was about 6. He was about 180. I mean, this guy gave it all, but left a lot of things out.
Right.
And this man, it seemed like this man knew him. I don't know. just very weird us talking about it and then me going back and reading it. Just didn't, that witness, just something didn't sound right with that witness.
Well, that is the thing. The suspect was only about 5'6", 5'8". He's a very small guy, maybe around 140 pounds. He said that he was probably in his early 30s, kind of a sandy reddish blonde hair. So we're talking about the killer was a small guy, and the witness we're talking was
6 foot.
Was over 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
They never have named him, but I know the 2 or 3 different official documentary things type videos that they've made, they have used a big black guy. So I'm assuming the witness was a big black guy, because they wouldn't have used that if that wasn't him, even though they haven't named him. So, but the person that they have coming into that situation was a bigger, more intimidating male than the killer.
Right.
And so to me, it seems to me like this is a man who has had some kind of intimidation issues. Somebody has mistreated him. Somebody has bullied him. He has a severe inferiority complex that he's overcoming. You know, this is just from my studyings, criminal psychology. He is a man who feels inferior. He's got a serious case of what we used to call little dog syndrome, because you always got the little dogs that'll just tear you a piece.
Oh yeah, we call it the Napoleon complex.
There you go. And he's obviously got something like that, and then he has some kind of anger issues towards a small brown-headed woman, and so to me it seems like if Michael McCowan had turned around, I think Michael McCowan would have survived, but he didn't go in and talk to Michael McCowan. Michael McCowan was down on his knees trying to arrange a bottom shelf. Okay, so he just walks in, sees a smaller person with a ponytail and earrings, and he shoots him in the back of the head. Later on you find out that was actually another small man. Okay, but I still think that he would have had a little bit of intimidation if he had known that was another male. So I'm thinking that this guy has some sort of serious inferiority. He doesn't want anybody that could potentially fight back. He doesn't want the confrontation. He just wants to kill somebody, and so it makes me really feel like this person is a very cowardice type person. He wants that power of life and death, but he doesn't want to fight for it or put himself at harm's way. You know what I'm saying? He's very, you know what I mean?
I take that as that he was somebody that was bullied, like you said. Maybe his mother, because now he was a short person, as we would take that, but that's why I don't understand when we give the height and weight of the suspect, not the suspect, one of the victims. He wasn't a victim because he let him go, was 6'2", 185 pounds, and he let him go, which I would think he wouldn't let him go because those are the type of guys that probably bullied him in school. These are the type of guys that he was mad at, but it seemed that maybe it wasn't. Maybe he was mad at girls like that because those are the girls that he went for. They were the same height as him. He liked women with dark hair, short, petite, his height, his, weight. And maybe his mother abused him. Maybe it was one of those and, put him down, maybe verbally abused him, not even just physically. So he went off, and the coward, being a coward, is that he didn't shoot the guy that they said was 6 foot something, 180 pounds. And then he just goes inside the store and he doesn't even want to look the woman in the face.
Right.
Shoots her in the head.
Right. He just wants to kill her.
Defenseless woman.
Right.
He just wants to go after this specific type of person. Because
he doesn't want to fight for it.
That's what he set out. Right. That's what he set out to do.
Right.
Well, he wasn't set out to do it against a man that was superior of him. So it kind of, I don't know, it's conflict. I don't know. It's weird that you would think that he would go after both. The people that turned him down and abused him, and then the bullies, which would be the people that were older than him, bigger than him, better looking than him.
He has this inferiority complex. He's probably to the point where he doesn't feel like he would win that battle. Even with a gun, he doesn't feel like he's man enough to handle another man 6.5 foot tall, 180, 200 pounds. And so to me, that shows some serious psychological damage, because I don't care, I'm 5'2", and you put a gun in my hand, it evens up the score. You know what I mean? If you know how to use a gun, you know. So to me, that shows just kind of how damaged he was. Some people have talked about this case before, and they say they wonder if he was some sort of soldier with PTSD. If there's something that he kind of snapped, because his shots always right on, it's always spot on. It's almost like a hired hit, except for the fact that he leaves.
But weren't they all execution style almost, most of them?
Mm-hmm. Every one of them, yeah.
I mean, that's not spot on. That's not something, you know, hard. It's cowardly.
It is.
But
it is.
No, but and it's also, you know, but you know, I have to take that back. Being from the street and seeing the way guys work, it's a lot easier to shoot somebody from far away than walk up close on them and put one in them and execution style. So, you know, you got to have some kind of moxie in that sense to just go out one day and say, this is the way I'm going to start committing my murders, my crimes, you know?
Right. Well, at 22, it's not like some kind of big sniper rifle where you can be,
No.
you know, yards and feet away or
Most
whatever.
of them are target pistol, right? They're target pistol. That's what they use them for, target practice.
So it's almost like he wants to be up close and personal for the kill, but he doesn't necessarily, you know, because a lot of serial killers, they thrive off of watching it. You know what I mean? They thrive off of the, you know, they crave the begging for their lives. They crave all of that. And he doesn't have that. He just wants to shoot them. And it's very unusual for a serial killer to even use a gun. Most of them like poisoning or strangulation or something else. But you don't hear of a lot of serial killers that actually use a gun, because they want to get in there and get their
up close and personal.
Right. Well, sounds bad. They want to get their hands dirty, literally. That's what they want. So anyways, we're going to go on after Sarah Blessing. We're going to take a 16-month break. Okay. 16 months. This man is disappeared off the map. They try to search, you know, prisons, people that have recently been arrested. They even think maybe he's committed suicide. So they try to investigate all the local suicides, trying to see if anybody matches up. They don't find anything. 16 months later, though, he shows up again, but he's changed his setting a little bit. He has taken and gone south off of I-70 down I-35 into Texas. Now, if you check out a map, all of that lines up. I-35 meets up to I-70, and then it flies south. And so he goes down to Texas, and this starts over again. September 25th, 1993, Mary Ann Glaskick is working at a local antique store in Fort Worth, Kansas. And she is same exact story. You can just repeat the same thing over and over again. It literally doesn't even give a lot of details on her case, because it is exactly the same. Nobody's around. Somebody walks in, shoots her in the back of the head, opens the cash register, grabs some cash, leaves. Only thing left behind is a bullet casing. Exact same story. Only difference is the fact that now it's still a 22 bullet, but it's a different 22. Okay, different gun. Okay. Within a few days later, November 1st, so we're talking a month later, Amy Vess at a dancewear store in Arlington, same exact thing over again, once again. Only thing left behind is that bullet casing. Now they can link those two bullet casings to the same gun because of the striations on the casing, but they can't link it to the original gun. Okay, so you've got some investigators that say these aren't the same thing. I say they are. A lot of the investigators say they are too, and I'll tell you why. During that 16-month hiatus, there was a huge nationwide media push. Okay, and so I'm saying it wouldn't take too much for this guy to say, oh my gosh, I was on the news, let's change guns. It's not that hard. Okay, Next, here's the last one that we know of. Now, this one is extremely different and rare. On January 15th, 1994, as far as we know, he did his last hit. Her name was Vicki Webb. She was working at a gift shop in Houston, Texas. Now, Vicki Webb was shot in the back of the head, but she survived. So she was able to tell investigators exactly what happened. Now, she said this man came in. He fit the description exactly. You know, very short, petite, smaller guy, had the kind of the rusty blonde hair, you know, short, a little bit of stubble, nothing major. Over and over again, you hear some people that say his clothes look like they were slept in, you know, and she said he was talking about the store. He wasn't necessarily talking about the area, what was in the store. He was talking about, you know, business. How was business? You know, was business booming? It was kind of slow time of year, you know, just talking about stuff like that. And then he said that there is a frame up there, and he pointed behind her that he would like to purchase. So she turned around, she reached up for it, and he shot her in the back of the head. Now, she should have been dead, but she had a little bit of a deformity that she was born with. Her spinal column was just a hair bit wider than it was supposed to be. It went between C2 and C3 vertebrae. It chipped that extra piece of bone and lodged there. That bone went into her spinal cord, but didn't sever it in two. So she was instantly paralyzed, okay? She decided to play dead, okay? And so she could see exactly everything he was doing. She lay flat on her face there. She said all she could see out of the corner of her eye was his feet as he rummaged through the cash register. Then he came back over to her and he flipped her over. And then he did something weird. And this is where some investigators think makes him a different killer. I don't think so. He flipped her over. He stripped her from the pants down. She said it was real quick, grabbed her pants by the ankles and just ripped them off. She didn't move. She couldn't move. Okay.
Wait, does she think that he thinks that she's dead?
See, here's the thing. The investigator asked her if it seemed like a sexual thing. She said no. It was extremely quick. To me, it seemed more like, I don't think she's dead. If I go to try to take her clothes off, she's going to freak out. If she's pretending, this is his way of check, is she dead? You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? If she's pretending like
she's
dead,
not moving, she's dead.
Right, you know. And so she didn't want to move, but she didn't realize until later she was paralyzed. She couldn't move anything but her eyes anyways. So he rips the pants off, and then he points the gun between her eyeballs. Click, it misfires. Then he hears a car pull up. He goes. He leaves her there. Okay. I think when he pointed that gun to her head, it just kind of verified he didn't think she was dead. He thought she was still there. But anyway, so some of the investigators think that he was going to sexually assault her. So this must have been a different killer.
Not the same serial killer.
Yeah. All three of the last three bullet casings were the same. Vicki Webb was paralyzed for 3 months. It took her 3 months of recovery. She had to learn how to walk again, everything. She says she wants to meet him face to face again and show him that he didn't win. I said, there's my Texas girl. I guarantee you she has a gun under the counter from now on. But the thing is
the store is still there? They're still there, that store?
Mm-hmm.
All these years later?
Was. Yeah, as of a few years ago, it was. I haven't checked
this
recently.
Was 94, if I'm not
94.
mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, did he take anything out of this register as he did the other ones?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he did have time when the car pulled up to still go to the register.
No, he did. Remember, she was laying flat, and she could see out of the corner of her eye his feet as he was digging in the register.
Oh, okay. I thought he was undressing her at that point.
No, then he came back to undress her. That's what makes me think if he wanted to sexually assault her, that's what he would have done. He went to the register, grabbed this, and it was always odd. He just grabbed a wad of cash out of the center. There was always still 100 or 2 left. There was always there was always still cash left in there. He just grabbed.
I don't understand it. Make it look like it was a robbery?
I think
or
so.
Was he really robbing to support himself? Because they said he looked like a vagabond. So
now I have dug up a couple more witness statements, some people that have actually seen him. or think they have. And I thought we'd share those, and then we kind of go over our opinions, and then we will close this crazy tale up. Now, way back.
These names down.
I'm sorry?
No, I flipped it over just to get the names. Go ahead.
Okay. At the beginning, okay, we're starting way back at number 1, Robin Fuldauer. Now, Robin Fuldauer was killed. She was the first one that we know of that was killed April 8th, 1992, way back in Indianapolis. Okay. Mm-hmm. This person did not come forward until after, after they saw the news and seen what happened, obviously. They called him the man in the green jacket. Okay, so we're seeing a man with a big baggy green overcoat, some sort. This man was working, the witness was working at a store, because he always hit the shopping centers, so there was always nearby stores. This man was working in a paint store across the way from the store that Robin Fuldauer would be found dead in. It was a shoe store. He said that he saw the strange man kind of wandering around the parking lot, and he said he was mumbling to himself and kind of giggling, like he was out of his mind on something. Okay, he's carrying a large bag, and he was just kind of mumbling around. Then he went and seen him sit on a curb and was looking towards the shoe store, and he sat there for a very long time, and he was constantly mumbling and digging in his bag. Then all of a sudden, about 2 o'clock, he said he didn't see the man anymore. He thought the man was gone. Well, of course, a couple hours later, police show up, everything, all hell breaks loose, and he finds out that Robin was killed in that shoe store. So he comes forward and tells them about this man. Okay. Next time the next witness that sees the man is the big black guy that we think intimidated his way out. Because I really think I think that's the only way he got out, because he was bigger.
Now, one more thing. This was a mini mall. This was on a large highway. There was other stores outside of the mini mall. He was sitting on a curb. There was, I don't care if this was 92. I've traveled because I don't like to fly. I've driven gas stations, mini malls. They had cameras in 92. Maybe surveillance wasn't as good. Right. There was no photo surveillance or electronic surveillance at all in that whole area.
As far as we can tell, and this is, like I said, as far as we can tell, because of course, I use it as it's a bad analogy, but this is a life and death chess match between law enforcement and a serial killer. So they're not going to show their hand, all of it. I mean, they're only going to give us so much information. We don't know about it. Right. So as far as we know publicly, there's no actual video surveillance of this guy anywhere. But I'm like you, I have a hard time believing that there's not somewhere. Now, I do know back then you're talking about the old VHS tapes, and they always recorded over them, so within a few days, if you didn't hit the store and get their surveillance, it would have already been recorded over again, so I don't know if that's
we know about stuff that went on in LA and other places and that had surveillance in 91.
Right.
Stores, gas stations.
Yeah. So see, my thing is, I think he targeted the small rural places that he thought he could get by with, but you can't tell me that his face isn't somewhere.
That's where I was trying to make my point with.
Yeah. I just think if the law enforcement have it, they're not telling us. And like I said, I don't necessarily blame them for that. They can't tell us everything.
No, especially if the investigation's ongoing.
Right. Our point is we need to know, we need to get this out to people so they can talk about it. You can't tell me nobody else hasn't seen this wandering vagabond mumbling around talking to himself, and wandering around everywhere that there's a dead woman show up in a store,
Right. And what people don't really get is street guys, because a lot of people always go, "Oh, Hootie consider himself a gangster." No, I consider myself a street guy. Was I around gangster? Did people call me a gangster? Did people call the people I hung around gangsters? Yes. We don't like to hear them not catching people that hurt civilians. Right. They think, like we say, F all law enforcement, they shouldn't catch anybody. No. If that's something like that's going on, we would help law enforcement if we can. Right. Even though we're told not to, and you're not supposed to somehow or some way, if we could, we will. We want guys like that to get caught. We want to help catch guys like that.
Right.
No, we don't want no civilians, no women ever getting hurt or getting killed by some guy that has some kind of fetish or whacked out, beliefs because of what happened to him in his life.
Right.
So,
well, and that's one thing that people don't.
That really irates us.
Yeah, that's one thing that I really people don't understand when it is talking about the Italian mafia. It was always for the betterment of the group, the betterment of the family, the betterment of the, the
Borgata. So it was always about the Borgata. Nobody was bigger than the Borgata.
It wasn't about individuals, it wasn't about, and so this is not good for the family, for the organization to have that kind of heat out there. It's not good, and so people want to make things out to be something that they're not. And, until I met Sidney and did his book, I didn't know the difference between a street guy and a gangster. I didn't, I didn't know that he technically had to become his own family and create his own criminal empire to be technically a gangster, because he was an Italian. His uncles were Italian by marriage. So he's no Italian blood whatsoever. 6.5 foot tall, blue eyes is kind of a clue that he wasn't Italian, he's paler than me, but I didn't know the differences between those. People want to class everybody in one big lump sum, but it's, to me, it's one of those things. It's better for America as a whole if we catch this guy, whether you're an Italian mobster, whether you're a street guy, whether you're, singing the church choir every Sunday, it doesn't matter.
This guy.
It's better. This guy caught. Right. It's better for our society if people like this are taken down, because this is a predator. This is not, this is a whole different breed of animal. You're talking about someone who goes out there, stalks people, hunts people, kills people like animals. This is a whole different thing. So we're going back to, let's see, the next time he's seen. Okay, so we're going to skip. The first person saw him, in the gray coat and the green jacket, saw him mumbling, sitting on the curb. Okay, that was in front of Robin Fuldauer. The second hit was when he killed the 2 women at the bridal shop and let the big black guy go. Okay, so the second time there was a witness there. The third time, I think
he was wearing a tweed coat at this point, right? Didn't he have an old beat up at a season tweed coat?
That was hit number 6. Yes. Okay. So we're at hit number 4. It's kind of hard because this is actually the 3rd shooting, the 4th victim. So we're at Sylvia Ceramics, where in Indiana, Terre Haute, where he killed Michael by mistake. Okay. Now there was a witness there too. Okay. Let's see. Let me find the guy's name. His last name is Lambert. He worked in an antique store across the complex away. Right. Again, he saw another man that was wearing a coat that looked too big, he looked like he had been slept in. And again, we're talking about someone who sounds like he's mumbling to himself. So again, we're talking about some kind of vagabond, some kind of somebody that looks like they've slept on the street, wearing an out of season jacket of some sort, kind of talking to himself. Okay, so that's the second time. Okay, then we get to Nancy Kitzmiller. Okay, Nancy Kitzmiller is victim number 5, shooting number 4. Okay, so victim number 5, and this is in St. Charles. This is another time where you have somebody who was working close by but never heard a shot. Okay, so they're working close by, they've seen some strange things outside, never heard a shot, then they've seen all the police cars going, what the heck? Okay, so the last one that we see is Sarah Blessing. Sarah Blessing is where Tim Hickman was working on the TV. He's seen the guy in the tweed coat, looked him eye to eye. Tim Hickman has struggled for 29 years because he was a young man. He's like, why didn't he pick me? I was in the store alone. There was no one around. He could have came in there and picked me. Instead, he goes next door. And then he said in one interview that he has dealt with so much grief and pain, because he's like, if I could have just got there quicker. You know, he said he ran out the door with a phone. You know, back then you had to carry the portable phone, you know, those big clunky boxes. You know, he ran across.
Yeah, right. That was the cell phone in the box, right?
Yeah, you know, cranky, you know, big clunky phone. He carried it next door and hollered for Sarah, and then found her in the back room dying, and he called. You know, he's like, if I could have just got there quicker. Well, we know that that's not his fault. He couldn't have got there quicker. He called immediately as soon as he seen her down, you know, but this is the kind of person we have. We have a very sadistic killer who is leaving other people to shoulder his guilt, you know, is what it is. And so we've got this poor Tim Hickman who has literally, you know, stressed for all of his life, you know, for 29 years. And
as we could say too, he's a scaredy cat.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly
that's what I'd call him. Let's call him a little scaredy cat.
Yeah,
because he runs at the sound of noise.
Well, and that's
picking on women.
You know, he's just the killer is definitely a scary cat. So we're gonna give you a couple more unusual things to think about. Every one of these bullet casings had a red marking on it, right on where the firing pin hits. Okay, everybody, that if you don't know what bullets look like, there's a little button on the top. That's where the firing pin hits. Okay, there was a red marking that was made from jeweler's rouge. It is what's used to polish the feeding mechanism, so the bullet goes through easy. It's what you use to clean a gun. Okay, so every one of them had this unique same jeweler's rouge, and so it's not necessarily in the point that nobody else uses jeweler rouge. A lot of firearms enthusiasts use it. Hang on. Sorry, my dog thinks he has to be by me, and now he's scratching. It's like, you're not going to scratch a hole in the carpet. Okay, we'll start that part over. Okay, so jeweler's rouge is used to clean weapons, but it's not necessarily a sole identifier of a killer, because a lot of firearms enthusiasts use these. But we've talked about before, both of these guns that it could have been are more of target practicing, more of collector's items. They're not necessarily a common gun to use. So that might be some kind of interesting thing. All of them, both Texas and the other ones on I-70, they all had the jeweler's rouge. They were fired from different guns because they had different striations on the casings, but they had that same jeweler's rouge. The MO's the same, all except for the last one. And so one thing that they tried to link it back, they took that original sketch from the guy that talked himself out of the situation. They took that sketch down to Vicki Webb, which is the woman who survived. They showed her that sketch, and she said that is absolutely him. No ifs, ands, or buts. So those are the only two things connecting, or three things connecting I-70 killings and the I-35s. The MO, the jeweler's rouge on the actual cartridge, and then her visual description and her visual identification, I guess is what you would say. So what do you think of this? Do you think that this guy is still alive?
Well, I mean, I didn't know that.
Do you think he's in jail?
I didn't know that one part that you just said, because you said he took 16 months off. Then they turned around and said, this isn't him, this is somebody else. But now they're bringing her the picture and showing her the picture, and her stating, no, that's him. How can they still go on and say that?
We had one investigator.
It's not him.
Yeah, they had one investigator who said, look, all my gut instincts, and he's one of them that was in charge of the serial killer investigation that brought down the BTK killer out of Wichita. And he's like, I know serial killers. You can't tell me this isn't the same guy. And
that's the biggest one, right? He's probably the tallest serial killer they ever caught, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that it? Or is that the co-ed killer I'm thinking of?
No,
I think the co-ed killer.
Yeah.
With the glasses.
Yeah.
The BTK killer, I think, was somebody else.
Yeah, the BTK killer was out of Wichita, Texas. Good grief.
They didn't catch him. That's the one that was doing it with the utility van.
Wichita, he was the one that was bind, strangle, torture, kill. That was what BTK was. He was killing the men and women. It wasn't just women.
Yeah, they didn't find him, but
I'm sorry?
He still hasn't been found yet.
No, the BTK, they found him.
No.
And this investigator.
So I'm thinking the one that they didn't find that I was watching.
Zodiac. Are you talking about Zodiac?
No.
The one out of California.
I'm trying to think of the big guy with the glasses. He's about 6'8". He had the mommy issues. He was a co-ed killer, I thought, but he might have been the BTK killer. I'm trying to think. They actually mine hunters. They did a show about him called Mine Hunters, and they were going down to see all the serial killers. And there was one that they didn't get who drove the utility van. He was married. His wife wound up reporting him. He used to dress like a woman. There was a whole thing on that.
I'll have to look into that one.
Yeah,
I'll have to look into that one.
Before we did this whole thing, I was trying to catch up on my serial killers.
trying to study up, huh? On the psychosis of a serial killer.
I was getting off my A&E specials and onto my serial killers.
Well, so this guy took 16 months off and then he hit again. Some people think he was arrested during that time, maybe.
You got it.
So we'll see you next time.
You got it. Thanks again, Sonova. Great show. Bye.